North Africa, 1940. British tank columns stretched across the desert. Magnificent machines of war, grinding to a sudden, humiliating halt. Not from enemy fire, from empty fuel tanks. German panzers roared past abandoned British vehicles, their crews laughing. The British engineers stared at the discarded German fuel cans littering the sand, mocking them with a design so simple it seemed idiotic, until one lieutenant picked one up. His hands trembled. "Bloody hell," he whispered. "We've been beaten by a can." 18th June 1940, 14:37 hours. Tobruk Supply Depot, Libya. Temperature 43 degrees. The air shimmered with heat as Sergeant James Colworth watched another fuel can collapse in a private's hands, petrol gushing across the scorching sand, the metallic stench mixed with cordite from distant artillery. That was the 7th can that hour, the 14th that day. "Bloody useless," the private shouted, dropping the crumpled tin. Fuel soaked into sand, worth more than gold in this godforsaken desert. Colworth said nothing. What could he say? The statistics were damning. British flimsies, their nickname was itself an admission of failure, leaked 30% of their contents during transport. The square design with its single handle meant soldiers could carry only one at a time. The cap, a simple screw-on affair, vibrated loose on rough terrain. The thin, pressed steel buckled under desert heat. Across the depot, Lieutenant William Hendricks stood beside a mountain of captured German supplies, studying something that made no sense. German fuel containers, identical, pristine, not a single leak. "Sir," Colworth approached, saluting despite the informal desert conditions. "Those jerry cans. Permission to examine one?" Hendricks nodded grimly. "Take a look, Sergeant. Try to understand how we're being humiliated by German rubbish containers." The container was heavier than expected. Colworth's calloused hands traced its surface, 3 handles, embossed cross-rib pattern across both faces. The cap wasn't a simple screw, it was a cam lever system with an internal gasket. He shook it. Bone-dry exterior. He dropped it from shoulder height onto concrete, not a dent. "3 handles," he muttered, "means 2 men can carry 4 between them. 1 man can manage 2. His mind raced through implications. Double the carrying capacity, halve the resupply time. "The cross-rib pattern," Hendricks observed, kneeling beside the can. "Structural reinforcement without additional weight. Prevents buckling under pressure or heat expansion." Colworth tested the cap mechanism. "This seal, sir, this is engineering brilliance disguised as simplicity." That morning, British command had received devastating intelligence. Rommel's Africa Corps was advancing with impossible speed, not through superior tanks, through superior logistics. German mechanized columns traveled 40% further between resupply than British equivalents. The reason lay scattered across the desert. Thousands of these stupid German cans, each one a masterpiece of industrial design the British had dismissed as crude. The strategic implications were crushing. In desert warfare, mobility determined victory. Fuel determined mobility. Container design determined fuel delivery efficiency. The Germans had solved an unglamorous problem the British hadn't recognized existed. Every jerrycan represented 20 litres of fuel delivered intact. Every British flimsy represented 14 litres delivered, 6 litres lost. "We're losing the North African campaign," Hendricks said quietly, "because we can't carry petrol." Colworth had fought at Dunkirk. He'd watched the BEF evacuate in defeat. He'd watched France fall. He'd watched the Luftwaffe bomb London. But this was different. This was being outsmarted by something so fundamental it hurt. The Quartermaster General dismissed German container design as over-engineered nonsense last year. Hendricks continued, pulling out a classified memo. Said British flimsies were adequate for purpose and cheaper to manufacture. "How many tanks have we lost because they ran dry before reaching the fight?" Colworth asked, though he knew the answer. They all did. "Official figures are classified. Unofficially," Hendricks met his eyes, more than to enemy action in the past 3 months. That afternoon, a sandstorm swept across Tobruk. British fuel dumps lost another 800 gallons to leaking flimsies. German supplies, stored in jerry cans, lost nothing. The problem wasn't just North Africa. Intelligence reports from Norway, France, and Greece told the same story. German mechanized warfare succeeded, partly because their logistics were fundamentally superior at the most basic level. While British engineers had focused on tank armor and gun calibers, German engineers had focused on fuel containers. Unglamorous, overlooked, decisive. Colworth carried the jerry can to his tent that night. He measured every dimension, drew technical sketches by torchlight, calculated stress points. The design was perhaps 5 years ahead of British capability, not because Britain lacked talent, but because Britain lacked urgency in mundane matters. "We need to make these," he told Hendricks the next morning. "Not copies, exact replicas, thousands, hundreds of thousands. Commandeer German manufacturing specifications?" Hendricks raised an eyebrow. "That's bold. That's survival," Colworth replied. "Either we admit the Germans solved something we couldn't, swallow our pride, and copy them exactly, or we lose this war one empty fuel tank at a time." The memo reached Cairo by evening. It reached London by midnight. In a War Office basement, exhausted civil servants read recommendations to immediately cease British flimsy production and retool for German specification container manufacture. The bureaucratic response was instant rejection. British industry producing German designs, politically impossible. Admit inferiority, never. But in North Africa, men were dying because machines were stationary, because fuel containers were inadequate. Pride was a luxury measured in corpses. August 1940, 22:15 hours, Ministry of Supply, London. Air raid sirens wailing. The meeting room shook as bombs fell on Stepney. Plaster dust drifted from the ceiling. Nobody moved. 6 men sat around a scarred oak table. 2 ministry officials, 1 army procurement officer, 1 industrial engineer, and 2 factory managers from Birmingham. "Gentlemen," said Colonel Arthur Whitmore, spreading technical drawings across the table, "we are here because British mechanized forces are being strangled by their own supply chains. The solution exists. The Germans invented it. We must swallow our pride and steal it." "Copy German designs?" Ernest Chadwick, ministry official, looked horrified. "The press would have a field day. Britain admits Axis superiority." "Britain admits we were wrong," Whitmore interrupted. "Different matter entirely. We designed rubbish. They designed brilliance. We adapt or perish." Outside, anti-aircraft guns hammered. The lights flickered. They'd been working 18-hour days for weeks. Tea had replaced meals. Sleep was managed in 90-minute increments between bombing raids. Robert McLeish, factory manager from Dudley, studied the jerry can specifications. "This cam lever cap system. We don't have tooling for this. We'd need to retool 3 production lines. Minimum. Cost, $85,000. Time, 6 months. We don't have 6 months, Whitmore said flatly. Rommel will be in Cairo by then. Then we improvise, McLeish replied. He'd been manufacturing metal containers since 1923. We cannibalize equipment from automotive parts plants. We train machinists on night shifts. We operate under blackout conditions. We make mistakes. We fix them. We iterate. David Green, the second factory manager from Coventry, nodded slowly. My plant was bombed last week. Lost half our capacity. But the workers, they're angry, Colonel. They want to fight back. Tell them we're building something that saves British lives. They'll work through anything. The practical obstacles were mountainous. Steel was rationed severely. High-grade steel for military applications was prioritized for armor plating and naval construction. Container manufacturing was considered low priority. The allocation system didn't allow for emergency reallocation without cabinet approval. Cabinet approval required 3 weeks minimum. We circumvent the allocation system, Whitmore said carefully. Each word was potential treason. We classify this project as weapons manufacturing. Technically, these containers are weapons. They enable weapons systems. We requisition steel under existing armaments priority. That's creative interpretation of regulations, Chadwick said weakly. That's war, Whitmore replied. I'll take responsibility. Courts martial me after we win. The next 3 weeks were controlled chaos. Birmingham factory floors that had produced biscuit tins now produced fuel containers. Workers who'd manufactured cookware now operated precision metalworking equipment. 12-hour shifts became 16-hour shifts. The blitz continued nightly. Production continued regardless. Training was improvised. Experienced machinists taught apprentices during tea breaks. Technical drawings were distributed through networks of shop floor foremen. Quality control was initially catastrophic. Early British-made jerry-can copies leaked almost as badly as flimsies. The cam lever mechanism required precision machining tolerances British workers weren't accustomed to. McLeish walked production lines at 3 a.m. during bombing raids, clipboard in hand. This cap seal, you're applying too much pressure. It warps the internal gasket. Light touch, firm rotation, stop when you feel resistance. Again. Material science created unexpected problems. German steel alloy specifications were guessed from captured samples. British steel behaved differently under desert heat, expanding at different rates, creating micro-fractures in weld points. Engineers worked through nights in unheated laboratories, testing samples in improvised ovens, adjusting alloy compositions by trial and error. By September, first-generation British jerry-can copies reached North Africa. Field reports were mixed. Better than flimsies. Leak rate down to 15%. Worse than German originals. Structural failure rate at 8%. The handles sometimes detached. The cross-rib reinforcement pattern wasn't embossed deep enough, reducing structural integrity. We're learning, Green told his exhausted workers at a midnight shift change, how to be honest about our limitations. The Germans spent 5 years perfecting this design. We've spent 5 weeks. We're catching up. We're not there yet. But every can that reaches our boys is one more tank that keeps moving. Morale was strangely high. The work was unglamorous, manufacturing containers, but soldiers' letters filtered back. These new cans, proper brilliant. Finally, something that doesn't spill half its contents. The connection between factory floor and desert battlefield was visceral. The Luftwaffe bombed Coventry in November. Green's factory took direct hits, 14 workers killed. Production halted for 72 hours. When it resumed, the survivors had cannibalized equipment from the rubble, reassembled one functional production line, and were making containers by candlelight because electrical systems were destroyed. They can bomb our buildings, one worker said, welding seams on a fuel can while structural fires still burned 2 streets away. But they can't bomb our bloody-mindedness. 15th of January 1941, 11:20 hours. Deutsches Afrika Korps Intelligence Office, Tripoli. Hauptmann Klaus Reinhardt stared at reconnaissance photographs with growing unease. British supply columns now moved with efficiency that contradicted previous patterns. Fuel resupply operations that previously required 6 hours now completed in 3. Mechanized units advanced further between logistical pauses. They're using our containers, his aide observed, pointing to enlarged images. Captured jerry cans. Impossible volume, Reinhardt replied. We've lost perhaps 4,000 containers to enemy capture. Intelligence suggests British forces now deploy 40,000 units. They're manufacturing them. The strategic implications crystallized slowly. German military doctrine presumed logistical superiority through superior equipment design. That presumption now faced contradiction. The British had done something fundamentally unexpected. They'd abandoned pride, admitted inferiority, and stolen German innovation wholesale. This contradicts everything we know about British military procurement, Reinhardt muttered, reading decoded British quartermaster communications. Their bureaucracy is legendary. Decision processes require committees, approvals, oversight. They implemented complete supply chain replacement in under 4 months. What the Germans couldn't comprehend was the specific character of British wartime transformation. When threatened existentially, British institutions bypassed their own regulations with cheerful illegality. Rules written in peacetime were ignored with polite determination during wartime. The same civil servants who'd normally require 18 months to approve a pencil order had authorized 2 million in expenditures through creative accounting. By March 1941, British jerry-can production exceeded German production rates. British factories now manufactured superior versions, incorporating improvements discovered through rapid iteration. The cross-rib pattern was embossed 2 millimeters deeper, increasing structural strength by 15%. The handle attachment system used a different welding technique, reducing failure rates to 0.3%. The cam lever cap incorporated a secondary seal that German designs lacked. In North Africa, Operation Compass succeeded partly through unglamorous logistics. British mechanized columns advanced 800 miles, destroying 10 Italian divisions, capturing 130,000 prisoners. German intelligence reports noted with frustration, enemy fuel logistics demonstrate unexpected efficiency. Previous vulnerability appears eliminated. The first direct engagement where container superiority became obvious occurred during the siege of Tobruk. German forces surrounded the port, attempting to starve British defenders. Fuel resupply required dangerous nighttime naval runs. Every litre had to count. British defenders received 22,000 jerry cans during the siege. German intelligence calculated British fuel supplies should have leaked 20% during transport and storage. Actual British fuel availability exceeded projections by exactly that margin. The siege failed, partly because the defenders never ran dry. "They've turned our own weapon against us," Reinhardt wrote in his classified assessment. Container design was an advantage we didn't recognize until it disappeared. Now they possess equivalent capability plus battlefield experience in improvised logistics. The psychological impact on German command was subtle but real. German military doctrine emphasized technological and organizational superiority. The jerry can represented that philosophy, superior design through superior engineering culture. Watching the British copy it successfully, then improve it, contradicted fundamental assumptions about Allied capabilities. What disturbed German analysts more was the speed. 4 months from recognition to implementation to superiority. That velocity of adaptation suggested British industrial mobilization was more flexible than intelligence estimates presumed. If Britain could reverse engineer and improve German container design in 4 months, what else could they do? The container war became metaphor for larger conflict. German forces still possessed superior tanks, superior tactics, superior battlefield leadership. But the British possessed something equally valuable: institutional willingness to admit failure, learn from enemies, and implement solutions with ruthless pragmatism. That characteristic would prove decisive in longer war. By June 1941, Allied forces globally had adopted the jerry-can design. American forces, studying British experiences, immediately abandoned their own inferior containers and ordered 20 million British-manufactured units. Soviet forces, receiving Lend-Lease supplies, received jerry cans as part of the package. The German innovation had become global standard, manufactured everywhere except Germany. That reversal contained poetic irony German commanders fully appreciated. 8th of May, 1945. Victory in Europe Day, Birmingham factory floor. Robert McLeish stood on the factory floor, watching the last jerrycan roll off the production line. 5 years, 21 million containers manufactured. He'd started this journey in August 1940, improvising with inadequate equipment during bombing raids. He ended it presiding over the most efficient container production facility globally. The statistics told a story no victory parade would capture. Allied forces consumed 1.3 billion gallons of fuel during the European campaign. Roughly 5% of operational fuel reached frontline forces via jerry can. That 5% represented the difference between mobility and paralysis at countless critical moments. D-Day landings, breakout from Normandy, dash across France, Rhine crossing, every operation depended on fuel logistics functioning flawlessly. American General George Patton had written in his diary, "The jerry can is one of the few things the Germans did better than we did, and we were smart enough to steal it." That sentence, later declassified, became epitaph for the entire saga. The engineers who dismissed German designs as over-engineered nonsense in 1939 never publicly acknowledged error. Most retired quietly. Some received honors for other contributions. The bureaucratic instinct remained. Admit nothing, credit nothing, move forward. But the institutional memory remained. Britain had been humiliated by a fuel container and had survived by swallowing pride. The long-term impact transcended military applications. Post-war British industrial design incorporated lessons learned. The principle that unglamorous fundamentals determine outcomes influenced civil engineering, manufacturing, transportation infrastructure. The jerry can became case study in design schools, business colleges, military academies. Sergeant James Colworth, the man who'd first examined captured jerry cans in Tobruk 1940, was promoted to major by war's end. He'd written the original technical assessment that triggered production changeover. After demobilization, he joined the Ministry of Supply, specializing in logistics optimization. When interviewed by military historians in 1963, he said simply, "We lost a lot of pride in 1940. We gained wisdom that trade was worth it. The containers themselves endured. Jerry cans manufactured in 1941 remained in military service into the 21st century. The design required no significant modifications. The original German engineering had been that good. British improvements were incremental, slightly better seals, slightly stronger handles. The fundamental design was perfect from inception." What the jerry can proved was uncomfortable truth about innovation. Sometimes the enemy does something better. Sometimes the correct response isn't to innovate competitively, but to copy exactly. Pride is expensive. Wisdom is admitting when pride costs lives. The Home Guard veteran who'd worked McLeish's production line through the Blitz, who'd manufactured containers while bombs fell, who'd lost 3 fingers to industrial accident but returned to work the next day, he never received medal or commendation. Thousands like him. Their contribution was manufacturing 20,000 metal boxes each. Collectively, they'd enabled victory through determined mediocrity in an unglamorous task. That was the British character at its finest. Willingness to do the boring, hard, unrecognized work with competence and humor. Not glorious cavalry charges or heroic last stands, just shift work in dangerous factories, producing containers one at a time for 5 years straight until the job was done. McLeish retired in 1960. His factory had transitioned to peacetime production, manufacturing water containers for civil defense, fuel cans for automotive industry, chemical drums for agriculture. The same techniques, the same precision, the same pride in work done properly. When he died in 1974, his obituary in the Birmingham Post mentioned his war service in one sentence: contributed to military logistics operations. No details, no recognition. That was appropriate. The jerry can's victory was invisible, achieved by invisible people, doing invisible work that saved visible lives. The final assessment came from German engineering journals in the 1950s, analyzing why Wehrmacht logistics ultimately failed. One article noted, "The jerry can was our masterpiece. We created it, then lost monopoly on it when the enemy proved more adaptable than we were. In war, the side that learns faster wins. We taught them. They graduated. The container sits now in the Imperial War Museum, displayed beside tanks and aircraft and uniforms, A simple metal box, 3 handles, cross-rib reinforcement, cam lever cap, 20-litre capacity, weight 3.5 kilograms empty, cost $120 to manufacture in 1941, value incalculable, the humble genius hidden in plain steel. If this story of hidden ingenuity moved you, subscribe to our channel for more untold histories from the Second World War. Discover the unsung heroes, the overlooked innovations, and the crucial moments that shaped our world. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What other invisible victories should we explore? Hit the bell icon to never miss our weekly stories. Remember, history's greatest lessons often come in the smallest packages. Thank you for watching, and keep calm and carry on learning.